The Justin Trudeau-led Canadian government on Friday denied a report linking top Indian leaders to criminal activities in Canada, saying that it is speculative and inaccurate. And Justin Trudeau himself has lashed out at his officials for leaking sensitive information. Meanwhile, in a statement days after a strong rebuttal from New Delhi, National Security and Intelligence Advisor to Justin Trudeau has said that the Canada government is not aware of any evidence of the claims that were made by Canadian media outlet, which also cited unnamed officials of India. Joining me now is Mohammad Ghazali, my colleague who has been tracking this case. Ghazali, before I go to Ghazali, let's listen in to what Trudeau said.
Well, first of all, we have seen, unfortunately, that criminal leaks, criminals leaking top secret information to the media has consistently gotten those stories wrong. That's why we had a national inquiry into foreign interference that has highlighted that the criminals leaking information to media outlets are unreliable on top of being criminal.
Ghazali joins us. Ghazali, Canada's government saying that it's not aware of any evidence of the claims made by this media house that also cited unnamed officials from India. India's strong and aggressive rebuttal of this, and also Trudeau's own statement. Help us make sense of this.
See, there have been a lot of U-turns by the Canadian government. If you remember, just last week, there was an order that India-bound passengers who are flying out from Canada to India will have an extra screening. They will have to wait for longer hours at the airport, and perhaps after the outrage, the Canadian government had to roll back that decision. Certainly going around with this particular case in Nijjar's killing, some of the officials came out saying that perhaps a media report claimed that unnamed sources in the Canadian government claiming that Indian Prime Minister and senior officials were aware about Nijjar's killing or they had a role in it. Yet again, the Canadian Prime Minister had to come out and rubbish all those claims, or counter those claims. They're perhaps saying these are leaks which are not true, and there are people who with vested interest are doing that. So perhaps somewhere it shows that some diplomatic pressure or pushback from India is certainly working in our favor, because the same Trudeau and the Canadian government, their RCMP, their intelligence agencies, week after weeks, leveled allegations against Indian officials up to the Home Minister of India, saying that perhaps he ordered or was involved in the murder of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, a declared terrorist by India. Now, weeks after that, they named Indian Prime Minister through a media report, and the same media report was quoting unnamed sources within the government. And perhaps after the pushback, the Canadian government realized that this is not going to work, because India keeps claiming that Canada has not shared any evidence. While Canada keeps claiming that they have evidence, they have shared within India, but whenever Indian government counters it, then there is a complete silence from Canada. And certainly, I think that has worked with the Canadian government realizing this, that without evidence, they can't keep leveling allegations, which is only going to hit the relations between India and Canada in the long run. And Mr. Trudeau already facing being blamed for bringing financial crisis in Canada, is now has been blamed by opposition leaders there itself in the domestic politics there, that how he's trying to divert attention from his own failures by pulling out all these allegations against India, by supporting the Khalistani elements in Canada. So perhaps after realization of all this, since Mr. Trudeau also faces elections in a couple of months from now, he has tried to calm things down and convey the message that perhaps all these issue of leveling allegations on its Indian partners is not working out.
Right. Thank you, Ghazali, for joining us with those details. We also have former Ambassador Suresh Goyal joining us. Thank you, Ambassador Goyal, for speaking to NDTV. Canada, which expelled 6 Indian diplomats over allegations that they were involved in a plot against separatists, Khalistani terrorists. Tell us, now that they've denied that they have evidence against Indian leaders, is it a vindication of India's position? And also, does this strengthen India in the eyes of allies and also geopolitically with respect to this particular issue?
I have a slightly different take on the whole issue, really. Please do remember that this issue started more than a few months ago. In fact, even at the time of G20 summit in Delhi, soon after that, Trudeau had begun to raise the allegations. So it was no one else but Trudeau who began to talk in the press conferences and to the media, raising allegations about Indian involvement in killing of Nijjar. And suddenly, I mean, after practically 1 year, he has begun to backtrack just after expelling the diplomat and raising the allegations against the Home Minister. And when the reports appeared about Prime Minister and the EAM, he began to backtrack. Now, my take really is that Trudeau was not acting entirely on his own behest in this whole game. I don't think it was purely Khalistani votes or the Sikh votes for which he was working. I'm quite certain that he was working at prodding of others really to nail the government of India on this issue,
Right.
maybe to keep them in a block. Now, is it a coincidence that as soon as the election results in the USA presidential elections come out and there is going to be a change, Trudeau has begun to change his tone. Is it a coincidence? I think we need to look at it further.
Right. Ambassador Goel, also in Canada, Trudeau's political opponents have been accusing his government of jeopardizing relations with an important trade partner like India. We all know that Khalistani separatism, terrorism has little or no resonance on ground as far as India is concerned. It's a dangerous game to play. How is Trudeau's rhetoric being accepted by people, especially the Sikh community, even in a country like Canada? Because generally the feeling is even Canadian Sikhs are not people who want this. Majority of them are completely law-abiding and they contribute hugely to Canada's politics, society and also economy.
Absolutely. I don't think that people in Canada are quite happy with the way Trudeau has handled this issue. Trudeau thought that he could be basically also gaining certain electoral advantages by adopting this policy. I think he has failed. The economy of Canada is suffering. And therefore, in my own mind, my own assessment is that Trudeau is not going to win this election in 2025. And therefore, we could have a new government. People in Canada certainly are not at all happy. Economy is not working well. Clear. Trudeau has failed on all accounts.
Right. Also, my last question to you, Ambassador Goel, what happens to this widening rift between India and Canada? Do you see any normalizing that's happening, that's going to happen? And also bilateral trade when it comes to goods and services, that is almost 19 billion US dollars. Do you see an improvement in that? And also, how do you get Canada to at least do basic things like providing safety to our diplomats and other basic things?
Trudeau has already begun to backtrack. Let us see how far this goes, whether there is actually any change in Trudeau's policy. Please do note that Trudeau has not accepted that there was no killing. Trudeau only has accused certain officials of leaking the information. I don't see that as a major policy change on behalf of Trudeau. So let us see what happens further. If it happens during his time, why not? After all, the relations are not dependent upon just one person. These are two nations. But if he does not, and the same policy continues, I'm quite certain that after the elections next year, and when the new Prime Minister comes up, the relations will again take a northward turn.
Right. Thank you, Ambassador Goel, for speaking to NDTV. Canada government, they're denying a report linking top Indian leaders to criminal activities in Canada, saying that it is speculative and inaccurate, and Justin Trudeau himself lashing out at his officials for leaking secret details. A clarification, of course, that comes after India's outright denial of Canada's charges.